Since it was first introduced in 2010, BASIS's browser user interface, BUI, has continued to evolve and has opened new doors for efficient web and mobile application development and deployment. BUI technology allows you to deliver your GUI apps in an instant as a web and mobile app running on any modern browser and without the requirement of a JVM or interpreter on the client. Welcome everybody, my name is Paul Yeomans with BASIS International, and today I'm joined by Nico Spence, our chairman and CEO. Let's take a look at what the agenda has for today. First, we'll very briefly touch on what is BASIS's browser user interface. We have lots of resources on the web about the subject in detail, including many Java breaks. Then we'll move straight into business apps, going mobile. The importance there, the business considerations for developing mobile applications or extending existing GUI applications into the mobile world. And then we'll touch on CSS, cascading style sheets, which is responsible for better looking BUI apps, which will increase your user acceptance. And then we'll finish up with taking your questions and providing you with answers. First of all, what is BASIS's BUI? Well, it's BASIS's magic of delivering web apps in an instant. And BUI, again, is browser user interface technology, whereby you write once and run everywhere. If you're feeling pressured to make your existing GUI apps mobile, go BUI. If you're wondering how to build mobile apps for multiple platforms from a single code set, go BUI. BUI stands for Browser User Interface Technology. And again, we did launch that way back in June of 2010. BBJ applications are able to run in any modern browser, including mobile, smartphones, tablets, phablets, etc. And once again, no JVM or interpreter is required on the client. BBJ BUI relies on cascading style sheets, CSS, which controls how a BBJ app is rendered on the desktop and in a mobile browser. Cascading style sheets are the most popular means of applying visual and, to some extent, behavioral changes to web applications running in browsers without the need to make changes to the programs backing up those applications. Check out the Java break, Web Apps Made Easy with BUI, where we present the new default CSS we added to BBJ with nearly 1,000 modifications to 800 controls and numerous new selectors. Like to see what a BUI app looks like? I'd invite you to go to our basis.com website and select Showcase, and from the drop-down select BBX Web Showcase. All those examples are delivered from an Amazon web server, and on those servers is where the BBJ services are running, and you can access the Showcase applications that we've posted there from any device. With BBJ, you can run your applications anywhere. Let's dive right into business apps going mobile. The sales of traditional PCs have continued to decline, replaced largely by smartphones and tablets carrying out the functions for business and for pleasure that were previously done on PCs. Mobile apps have generated a completely new market. ISVs with a business-oriented product portfolio must offer mobile apps in order to stay competitive. The market for mobile applications is booming, and with mobile devices sales exceeding 1 billion units for the first time just last year in 2013. Though the market is booming, in terms of smartphone operating systems, there are not many players left. According to IDC Worldwide Mobile Phone Tracker, Android and iOS had a 93.8% market share in 2013. That being said, though, there is no one-size-fits-all way to write native apps that would work on all OS platforms. And what about those platforms? Just a few years ago, Nokia's Symbian OS had a 57% market share, and BlackBerry was second with 17%. Where would you be today had you developed your app for those operating systems? The landscape has changed considerably. What platform should you target today? Android? iOS? What if it didn't matter what tomorrow's dominant OS was? As business application developers, it seemed you would either have to write a separate native app for each platform you intend to cover, or make use of the fact that all mobile devices have internet access and are equipped with web browsers. There are limitations to web apps, though, and we'll touch on that in just a moment. Making matters even more challenging is that most developers do not start with a blank slate. They already have desktop applications to maintain. In most cases, they just want their mobile app to offer a new functionality of their desktop application for specific user groups, such as salespeople, technicians, or management who cannot easily access the company's IT system when they are mobile. Developing parallel mobile apps would require working in different development environments while at the same time assigning resources to the maintenance of their main application. This is rarely a feasible option. Developers can choose among three basic ways to avoid writing multiple native apps. They can be cross-compiled apps, hybrid apps, or web apps. Let's review these three methods, and additionally, we will see how Basis's BUI technology fits into the picture. Developers can design native apps for a given operating system in the respective programming language: Java for Android and BlackBerry, Objective-C for iOS, .NET for Windows, and so on. By creating native apps, you ensure that your application makes full use of all hardware resources of the device and that all interfaces work well together. They are best for computation-intensive applications and are preferred for visualizing 3D graphics and for games. The obvious downside are the costs of developing and maintaining several applications in different programming languages, and that often means a steep learning curve for some, plus implementing different platform-specific technologies. The second development choice is cross-compiling apps. The idea behind cross-compiling apps is to write the source code just once and then compile it via code generators to the various platforms. What you get are in principle native apps, but based on the lowest common denominator in terms of functions and the UI. The downside again is a pretty steep learning curve and no savings on deployment hurdles. Cross-compiling apps with a code generator gives you the lowest common denominator of all native UIs. What about hybrid apps? Hybrid apps try to combine the advantages of native apps and web apps. Technically, hybrid apps are HTML5 and JavaScript-based web apps connected by containers written in the respective native languages. Hybrid apps can access at least some of the hardware resources of smartphones and tablets without the need to write completely separate source code for each platform. The native containers needed to achieve this are bundled in a framework such as PhoneGap. Hybrid apps generated with frameworks like PhoneGap allow mobile apps to access some of the hardware resources of smartphones and tablets. And finally, what about web apps? Web apps, obviously, are applications which use a web browser as the client. Since nearly all commonly used mobile devices are equipped with such browsers, web apps are a convenient way to reach potentially all target groups with minimum development effort and none of the deployment headaches. However, web apps written for the desktop often have a completely different look and feel than would be expected for mobile devices. The UI is a critical component to user acceptance. Therefore, web apps require some tweaking to make them look like a native app that users expect. The smaller real estate or working surface and gesture controls are just two considerations. Let me hand it over to Nico, who will explain where BUI fits in.
Thanks, Paul. Well, where does BUI fit in? It's number 4. It's a web app, but with a twist. It's a single-tool web app approach for developing cross-platform mobile apps. After all, BUI is BBJ. It's implemented with GWT, which cross-compiles Java to JavaScript. And that creates a browser-based BBJ client, just like any of your own business applications developed in BBJ. It uses standard HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to be deployed in the browser. So let's look at some real-world examples. Heimbus of Germany has a BUI app for care management in nursing homes. So it began as a BBJ GUI app, but it now runs on iPads and most other tablets, so that patient information can be available at the tap of a finger right at the bedside. Another good example of a real-world app is MQ Consultants of New York. They have a BUI app for commercial construction, so on-site access for materials planning, recording, orders, and payroll capture. Here we showed as a mock-up that Basis did to exploit some of the skeuomorphism capabilities of showing a LED type readout of hours captured and a report that looks like it's green bar printing. Another good real-world example is Wim Bosman Logistics in the Netherlands. They're a logistics service provider, and they use BUI for a tracking system for their trucks deployed across Europe in real time. And it employs the GPS sensor of the mobile device to interface to the application. So by generating JavaScript from BBJ code, you can use a single web app development tool. No developing and maintaining different apps for the desktop versus the browser, or for your mobile devices. You can adjust the UI to smartphones and tablets, and take advantage of cascading style sheets to deliver the different look and feel. And that replaces perhaps using several tools for your web app development, HTML, Perl, JavaScript, all replaced with one tool, BBJ. Let's recap. The 4 methods for developing mobile apps each has its pros and cons, but BUI offers the superior paradigm. It's the most cost-effective, it's the most risk-free. This is especially true for existing desktop business apps that need to have a mobile component. Now let's consider some of the commercial considerations for native apps. You have the various app stores. There's time to market that can be exacerbated by an approval process. And there may be new OS versions that come out that have to be accommodated. You don't want your app to look like it doesn't belong on that particular operating system. And of course, that's multiplied by the number of platforms that you decide that you wish to support. And of course, vendor fees, running at approximately 20% of the retail price of your mobile app. There's a far better way. Consider the BBJ commercial considerations. You get your BBJ license from Basis, and you develop once for all platforms from a single code base. No application approval process, and consider the costs of developing that app. You can use your existing BBX knowledge. There's no need to go and learn 3 or however many more native development tools to create your application. Your application can be deployed in a browser or mobile device, and you can utilize normal licensing available from Basis or consider revenue sharing. Speak to your Basis account manager to find out more. It's time to have a look at some of these BUI apps in action. We have a BBX BUI showcase. It's delivered from an Amazon Web Services server that Basis has in the cloud. And that's where BBJ services are running. And you can try this yourself, either from your mobile device or from your desktop. Let's have a look. Let's spend a few minutes having a look at some of the BUI demos. So if we go to the basis.com website, go to Showcase, and look at the drop-down list of BBX Web Showcase menu option, you'll see that we have some showcase programs, smartphone, tablet demo apps, dashboard demos, desktop, laptop demos, advantage demos, and some small sample programs. Important to note is that you can view the source from these sample programs by clicking on the magnifying glass icon, and of course you can also get most of these demos from clicking the checkbox for demos when you download the product. Let's have a look at some examples. I really like the BUI music inventory, the iOS 6 style, so utilizing CSS to give us a look and feel as if this is running on an Apple iPhone with iOS 6. Have a look at Chris de Burgh. Look at this particular album. You'll notice over here the button looks like an iOS 6 type button. The background texture tells us that it looks like iOS 6. If we come out of that and run the equivalent iOS 7 one just by using a different CSS file, we get a look and feel that's similar to the iOS 7 look and feel. Notice the background shading here that's replicating the album cover, and the back arrow is now an arrowhead, as you would expect from iOS 7's look and feel. Let's have a look at another really simple one, but showing you how you can use CSS to create sliding windows. So let's show a child window sliding out from the left. Let's hide it, and we can slide one out from the right. So we're getting animation from utilizing CSS. Again, source code is available to you. Let's have a look at this one. I quite like this one. It's a tablet type device, quite a nice busy icon that tells the user that it's still running. This is a Barista app, and I'll just run it from beginning custom ID first to last, so the whole demo data set. And now it'll go away and create the report, give me a progress bar, and then it'll present it in BB Jasper. And I can do the standard things I could expect to do in the desktop. Zoom in, and I can also email this report, print it. Printing will go to a PDF and then be served up by the Jetty web server. Create an image of the current page. That's quite useful if you just want to send a particular page off to somebody. And I could also save it, save as, and save as a Google Doc. So really nice functionality that's available to you, as you might expect from BB Jasper. But running in BUI, all the same code. Let's have a look at some of the charting. I really like some of this. Let's look at the demo dashboard. So this is brand new in BBJ 14. Again, quite a nice loading animated GIF. So we're loading up the dashboard, and now it's loading all the various charting types we have in the demo. In this case, it's showing us the bar charts that are available. Look at some sample data, line charts that are available, pie charts, grids, HTML views, reports, and again, this is a BB Jasper report showing up in the demo dashboard. So pretty powerful. Let's look finally at a practical one from the add-on software. They've taken advantage of that and implemented it within add-on software. So we're creating a dashboard, and there we're going to see that we have two tabs. One is an accounting tab, and one is sales tab. In this case, on the sales side, we're just looking at a BB Jasper report again. And then when we're in the accounting side, we may want to look at this cash conversion cycle. Let's actually pop that out and make that bigger and display in a center spot. So really nice feature. All of this running in the browser user interface. No Java required on the desktop. No BBJ installed on the desktop. No installation at all. As long as you have a modern browser, you'll be able to view this. Other functionalities, you can decide to move a particular chart into a different spot, automatically rearranges it. All of this is functionality that's standard in the BBJ utility, so you can use it with your own application. And of course, you could also use it in Barista, or you will see it function within add-on software. Right, let's have a look at a couple of others. The phone BUI menu app, it's quite nice. It shows you how you can chain various BUI apps to a menu. So if we look at the stock quotes mimics the native iOS app. With one little tweak, we've added the chart as well. So enhanced what is available in the standard Apple app. You can of course add your own stock or ticker quotes to be viewed, and you can also then view information that's specific to that stock quote, so stock symbols, etc. Here's a nice one. Really, it goes back to the original 2010 launch of BUI. Little app that shows some animation. The Dry Canyon Chili Company. And a very simple one. I put in a customer number and check the balance, and it'll record that, it'll return that information from my database. So quite a nice way of showing you that you can give management information perhaps to your executives on the road via BBJ. Link it into your corporate database. Let me finish off with a couple of other examples. Customizing message boxes with CSS. So here's our default access denied type error dialog with the new default CSS. So it looks pretty cool. But what happens if you decide to customize that? We can customize that and make it look even cooler. And then finally, one that shows really how we can enhance it even more by adding an image relating to the task or the error that's actually happening, show that there's a problem with the linkage to the printer. So a really nice example of how to do that. And then customizing the grid with CSS. So here's our default CSS showing the grid. If we can go to the blue CSS, we've got different fonts, different shades of blue, different environments. Color CSS, we can go to town with adding various bits and pieces of color. Same source code underneath, just a different look and feel on top of that. Let's get back to the presentation. So as we've seen, should the new operating system have a different look and feel, there's no problem. We can provide an updated look via CSS. No code changes, we can match the platform, and it also works for an app look and feel refresh without having to change code. For a real-world example of using CSS, have a look at the add-on software digital dashboard, here running on an iPad mini. And if you want to, you can take that dashboard and apply some CSS. Here is a light and dark themed version of one of the dashboards. The dark theme uses both CSS as well as some of the dashboard methods to accomplish the change in appearance. So for right now, it's not a single code base with two different CSS files like the music inventory demo, which showed the iOS 6 and the iOS 7 versions, but the code differences are minimal. It's a good example of how you can use CSS to dramatically change the look of your BUI app. So what is CSS? Cascading style sheets are a text file that describes how graphical elements should be presented to the user. These are instructions for the JavaScript engine of the browser. What that means is that it leverages the graphical rendering power of the mobile processor, offloading the need to do this at the server level. Here's a short sample of CSS code. CSS uses a markup language that describes elements via a list of properties and values. With CSS, you control font size, adjust colors for greater contrast, animate a control state for feedback to the user, and optimize control appearance based on the device and the available screen size. It's economical. High-definition designs can be developed at low cost with a shortened development process and the use of templating. The presentation is defined in a single CSS text file that applies the same CSS rule to multiple controls and can be used for multiple apps. It delivers consistency. Visual consistency is maintained through an external CSS style sheet without having to edit every page separately. Updates can be executed across an entire app, making maintenance much easier. And it has great flexibility. CSS provides a complete range of content and graphical adjustments using less code than HTML. Even the backgrounds can be adjusted with different color tones and graphics. Let's consider some of the terminology. We have selectors, properties, and values. Selectors are used to select which objects or controls the corresponding styles will affect. They can be simple or complex. They can have IDs, classes, types, or pseudo-classes. They can be general or they can be specific. You can use predefined basis selectors versus custom selectors. So the predefined ones would be .bbj button. Or you may create a custom selector for a particular button, my exit button, for example. And those properties define the style to be applied to the object or BBJ control. You would use recognizable text followed by a colon, in this case color, and then set it to red. You modify the object in many ways. You can do fonts, colors, margins, and padding, and borders. You could also harvest custom CSS from a website. So you could use a website to give you a CSS button generator, or use custom CSS from a website to set gradient generators. Here in the screenshot, we see how we've highlighted a particular piece of CSS code that we can merely cut and paste into our CSS file. Most IDEs support CSS editing to some degree. Eclipse comes with a web development package, and another choice would be the Aptana package for Eclipse. Features vary between IDEs and plugins. For example, code completion as shown in this screenshot, code folding, syntax coloring. Here's another screenshot showing the Aptana plugin's find and replace capability. There are standalone editors. Some are cross-platform, others are available on a couple of platforms, and some are specific to a particular OS. Some are free while others are pricey. Some have really cool features, like Microsoft Word style formatting, quick comment, and live preview. When you look to customizing your BBJ controls, there are several sources for free fonts. The google.com web fonts, which offers over 600 free fonts. They do not have to be pre-installed, work on virtually all devices. fontsquirrel.com, 100% free for commercial use, hand-picked by designers with very high quality fonts. And there's bestwebfonts.com, add effects to Google Fonts and exposes the CSS. Here's a quick screenshot showing you a BUI app using custom fonts. Here are several examples of customizing BBJ controls. That mock-up we did for MQ, showing the LED type readout of hours captured, a native list button, a BBJ list button, and a list control showing you an image next to the selected item. So you can build custom controls, create your own activity indicator, for example, utilizing an animated GIF image. Static images and CSS animations are available. There are some great examples of pure CSS to create animated GIFs. Come back and view this video to have a look at some of these short links. That'll give you access to some online examples. And there are free web resources for building custom controls. Preloaders.net, webscriptlab.com, and of course there are numerous free .gif images available to you. Now let's talk about some of the considerations for mobile. Touch and click. We don't have a mouse, we don't have a hover effect, we don't have a busy state available to us. So in touch-oriented browsers, mobile browsers, a user might double tap to zoom in and out. Now the question that your application wants to know, is it the start of a double tap or is it just a click? Do they want to actually do something? Well, how is that dealt with? Well, there's a 300 millisecond pause before reporting the action to take into account whether it might be a double tap or a click. But you may not want that sort of a delay in your application. So we've given you the option to eliminate the delay with some simple code. So you can utilize the bang options for fast touch click equals true. And what that'll do is that it'll eliminate the delay for clicking on buttons. The double tap to zoom is still available on the form itself. What about the busy indicator I mentioned earlier? How do we enable that? We've added the BBJ busy indicator to allow you to load your own busy indicator that'll show up when the application's busy doing something and you want to give the user feedback that it's still in progress and they should wait for it to respond. What about taking advantage of some native capabilities of the mobile devices? We have a couple of choices for you. Again, in the SDBL Bang options, we have an option for native browser list. What that'll do, if you see over here on the left-hand side, we have the surnames and that's a standard BBJ list button in operation. While on the right-hand side, we have an iPhone running, and here we've elected to utilize the native browser list and shows the iOS list picker. And that would be different for iOS 6 versus iOS 7. But it gives the feel that the user's using the application for the native device. We also have an option for native browser message box, which will default to using the browser message box rather than the BBJ message box. Let me hand over to Paul to sum up.
Thanks, Nico. Recall those PC sales trends I spoke to earlier? PC sales peaked and are falling off dramatically, more than 8% last year, and another 6% decline is projected for this year. The business needs remain, though, only the devices have changed. Look again at the unit sales increase in smartphones from 2012 to 2013, up nearly 40%. The needs remain, the devices to access your app are just different. It is time for you to develop your mobile app to address these changes. We've got a lot of references regarding BUI and specifically CSS to present to you. BBJ BUI Getting Started documentation at the links.basis.com address there. The BUI CSS API, and a good Advantage article to get you started into the world of custom CSS. In summary today, we touched on what Basis's BUI is, what it's about. We talked about the business need for going mobile. That is the direction of the industry, of our world that we live in today. We talked about the use of CSS for better looking BUI apps. More resources, some of these are from the Advantage magazine, one that was entitled Default CSS Gets a Makeover. BUI to the Max, this was a lot about performance. A bountiful selection of new CSS selectors. Improve and beautify barista apps with CSS. And now, let's take your questions.